Hello. Today we're going to do room selection 101. Today is going to be all about the basics of Columbia's housing annual room selection process. Whether this is your first or your third room selection, very nice that you're here today. While room selection doesn't officially start until the spring, watching this brief presentation is a great way to start to prepare yourself. Before we get started, I want to introduce myself. My name is Lalaine, and I am a senior at Columbia College studying English and anthropology. I also work as an operations assistant with Columbia Housing, and I've completed 3 room selections. So I know a lot about housing as well as the room selection process. So some basics. Room selection is when eligible undergraduate students declare their housing intent for the following year and select a room. So to be eligible, it means you have guaranteed housing status for the upcoming academic year. The process is based on seniority, which is why rising seniors get to pick their housing first. Within each class, the selection order is determined by a random lottery. All room selection events take place in the spring through the housing portal. And please, if there's one thing you remember today's presentation, I want it to be this: you must declare your housing intent. In other words, you have to inform housing what your housing plans are for next year. This applies if you're moving off campus, studying abroad, taking a leave of absence, are already assigned to a room, or plan to select your own room. If you don't declare your housing intent, you will lose your guaranteed housing status. So, question about what you need to be doing right now. The good news is there's no action required in the fall. They're already one step ahead because you've decided to watch this video. But if you want to start preparing, here's how. Consider special housing options like special interest communities or fraternity or sorority life. They may have application requirements on an earlier timeline than this. Also, you can register for virtual information sessions. Links and dates will be shared later or are on the housing website. Another helpful tool is exploring the room selection web pages on the Columbia Housing website. They include everything you need to know about the process. Finally, start thinking about who you want to live with. I'll have some tips about that later on in the presentation. Now that you know what room selection is, we can talk about how it happens. First, you do need to declare your housing intent. Then you need to understand how your point value impacts your room selection. Next, you'll register either as a group or as an individual. And then after registration, you can start exploring your housing options and making a selection plan. And then finally, you'll select a room and sign your occupancy agreement. To repeat, everyone must declare their housing intent, because if you do not, you will lose your guaranteed housing status. Pre-assigned students go first. This is typically in mid to late February. This is for RAs and their riders, students living in SICs and fraternity sorority life, and students with registered accommodations and their riders. Once they declare their intent, they're done with the process. They do not form groups, and they do not select their own room. Next up, we have students who plan to select their own room, or who are moving off campus, studying abroad, or taking a leave. They will declare their intent in late February to early March. Step 2, understanding your point value and how it impacts your selection is the next step. Everyone is assigned a point value weighted to their class. For example, rising seniors are 40 points, rising juniors 30 points, and then rising sophomores are 20 points. This means that a lot of you are going to have the same point value. So to decide appointment times fairly, housing runs a lottery. The point value tells you the range in which you can expect your lottery number to fall. Rising seniors who have the highest point values get first pick, lottery numbers between 1 and 1,000. Rising sophomores who have the lowest point value get last pick lottery numbers between 4,001 and 5,000. You probably noticed that there are some gaps in the lottery numbers between these classes. These lottery numbers go to mixed point groups, which refers to groups made of students from different classes. For example, if you have a group of 3 juniors and 1 senior. Then you randomly draw a lottery number within your designated range. Your lottery number will determine your selection date and time. Lottery number 1 will have the first appointment time, whereas lottery number 5,000 will have the last appointment time. In other words, rising seniors do select first. So this means that everyone has an equal chance of getting a favorable or unfavorable lottery number within their designated range. The process is truly random. Numbers are computer generated and assigned. Now, It's finally time to register. You can participate as an individual or as a part of a group with 2 to 10 people. Our recommendation is to form an even numbered group because you'll have more flexibility. So let's talk more about what these groups and even numbered advantages are. Fact, groups have more options. This is because groups can select into corridor singles, corridor doubles, or suites. They can divide across room types, floors, and even buildings depending on the available inventory. The rule for groups is that you must fill the entire space without any empty beds. For example, a group of 4 cannot select into a 6-person suite because it would leave 2 empty beds. And even numbered groups are more powerful. When all corridor singles are gone, even numbered groups can select into corridor doubles. However, an odd number group wouldn't be able to fill all the bed spaces, and so they wouldn't be able to select rooms. Instead, that odd number group would be placed on the guaranteed assignment list and assigned a room over the summer. If you register as an individual, your options are more limited. Individuals can only select into spaces designated for one person, like corridor singles and 1-bedroom or studio apartments. When there are no more corridor singles, individual participants are added to our guaranteed assignment list and assigned a room over the summer. The inventory of corridor singles is limited, especially for rising juniors and rising sophomores. We strongly encourage those students to form even numbered groups to improve their chances of selecting a room. After registration, you should explore the residency hall directory and begin making a selection plan. The directory can be filtered to show options specific to you and your group. For example, you can use the typical residence filter to show buildings based on the populations within them. Use the room/suite capacity filter to show buildings that have configurations that match your group size. This is most important if your group wants to live together in one suite. Then, you can also click into the building pages to learn more about each individual building. These pages include room selection data to help you understand how students selected into that building last year. You can also see room photos, floor plans, and learn about the building's features and amenities. Once you've done your research, it is time to make that plan. Create a list of rooms that fit your criteria. So use this list as a reference during your selection appointment. And before you know it, it will be time to select your room. The appointment time refers to the specific day and time that you or the group leader will select your room in the housing portal. Individual students and groups each receive 1 appointment time. Individual participants will select their own room, while the group leader will select rooms on behalf of all group members. Appointment times are shared in mid to late March, and then appointments typically begin in late March as well. And then the final step is to sign your occupancy agreement. This agreement finalizes your room assignment. If you don't sign it, you could be putting your room assignment in jeopardy. Every individual needs to log into the portal to sign their own occupancy agreement. Now, let's spend our last few minutes talking about resources and frequently asked questions. If you found this session helpful, or if you have more questions, I highly recommend that you attend a virtual information session. Housing offers 3 sessions dedicated to different audiences. And if you cannot attend live, that's okay. The session is recorded and posted to their YouTube channel. Another common FAQ is, how do I decide who to live with? While it's fun to live with your friends, it's best to choose a roommate whose living preferences align with your own. If having a clean space is important to you, pick someone who also values a tidy space. If you want to sleep until noon, don't pick someone who is up at 6 a.m. each morning. You get the gist. You're more likely to have a good experience if you can prioritize alignment of living preferences. Another question is where to find more information about this process overall. There are 3 important resources that I recommend keeping in the back of your mind. Start with the housing website. The room selection web pages contain a ton of helpful information that explain the process. You should also follow Housing on Instagram. They post frequently asked questions and other graphics to break down the complex questions that come out around room selection time. Lastly, always read your emails. Housing communicates primarily through email, so make sure you're always opening their messages. Lastly, you may be wondering about when this happens. Room selection events and activities start in February and run through April. You can visit the calendar on the housing website to see all the dates in one space. You can even download the web pages The events on the webpage directly onto your Google Calendar so you never miss a deadline. And that's room selection 101. Before I end, I want to revisit some key points. Everyone, every individual needs to declare their housing intent. Doesn't matter where you plan to live next year, please tell us about your intentions so we can plan accordingly. The lottery is truly random. Students of the same point value. The lottery is truly random for students of the same point value. They have an equal chance of getting the highest or the lowest lottery number within the class. May the odds be ever in your favor. Even number groups are the best. You have more options, more flexibility, and more power. And ultimately, just remember, you've got this. Thank you so much for joining me today. You're already doing great. And if you want to learn more, there'll be additional opportunities to do so in the spring. The housing team is always here to help with this process. And best of luck with the rest of the semester.